So have you ever wondered why is it that comic books don't reach more than like 100,000, 200,000 copies, but a novel, something like, I don't know, a fantasy novel, a science fiction novel, something like Ready Player One, The Hunger Games, you know, whatever kind of novel. I mean, it's just text, right? It's just text. It's just words, paragraph telling a story. Why does a novel sell way more, has more potential than a comic book? Stay tuned. I'm about to explain it. Hello guys, don't forget to like this video, don't forget to subscribe, and hit that little bell right there so that you can get notifications every time I upload a video. Okay? Enjoy. What is up guys, this is your boy Andy Matrix. Welcome to Andy Arts TV, where I talk about anime, manga, video games, geek culture, Japanese culture. So, for today's dose of geek culture, we're going to talk about why does a novel, like let's say Ready Player One, makes more money, sells more copies than a comic book, right? So, and I'm gonna show you some stats here on the screen where this is from Comic-Con. You see, a novel, unless it's Batman, unless it's Superman, unless it's Spider-Man, one of the huge superhero characters, right? One of the huge superhero characters. Unless it's one of those, a comic book is not gonna sell millions of copies. Even with the success of superhero movies, Marvel, DC, Avengers, Justice League, whatever, people are not buying comic books in the millions. Okay, comic books don't go past 100,000 copies sold, 200,000 copies sold, 300,000 copies sold. I think, per year, by the way. I think the most one copy of a comic book has ever sold, and this is Batman or Superman, I think it was. It reached like 400 to 500,000. Still didn't make it to a millions. However, manga, okay, Japanese manga, on the other hand, does reach a million. Very easy, okay, very easy. Both in Japan and over here in America. Most likely in Japan and in America, but you guys get the point, right? And then novels, let's say if you were a comic book artist, right? If you were a comic book artist, you're more likely to sell a million copies if you change your career from a comic book artist to a novelist. I'm not joking, okay? You have people that are self-publishing on the Amazon Kindle that sell hundreds of thousands of copies, that sell copies much faster than, let's say, somebody that works for a DC or Marvel, and or for DC or Marvel, and I don't know, they make some comic book, and then that comic book only sells 10,000, 50,000 copies. If it's lucky, 50,000, 100,000 copies. Let me give you an example. The Amazon cartoon, Invincible. I love that show. Okay, that's a really good cartoon. Very high quality. The comic book, till this day, it's sold 100,000 copies. I think maybe over 100,000. Probably a little more than 100,000. It could be 200,000, but it's right there, right? The numbers that I've been consistently saying with comic books. It turns out that comic book series, Invincible, it was actually published sometime in the early 2000s. I kid you not. Sometime in the early 2000s. I think it was 2003, 2004, where the first comic book was published, right? Until this day, it has not reached a million. Okay, despite of the fact that it's an Amazon show, it's on Amazon Prime Video, right? It still hasn't reached a million copies. So this is why, pay attention, this is why a novel is more likely to sell than a comic book, right? And I'm telling you this as a person who has published novels on the Amazon Kindle. As a matter of fact, I put a picture of one of my books here. You know, if you want, I mean, I'm not trying to pitch my books here, but if you guys want to check out my novels on the Amazon Kindle, check out AJ Martinez on the Amazon Kindle. You see all my books: Sin of Mages, Follow My Demigod, The Ungifted Elf, all on Amazon. You can go, guys, go check it out. I have gone to conferences, okay, writers conferences, where you will see, writers conferences where I've met people, okay, I've met writers who've sold 1 million copies, self-published without publishing with a big house, with a big publishing house like Penguin, right? Like Penguin House Publishing. Self-published authors sell millions and millions of copies, so they can make a really good living, right? And but comic book artists, even self-published comic book artists, they don't really reach those numbers ever. Manga always reach those numbers. So here's why. So reason number one why novels sell more than comic books is because with a comic book, you're not only do you have to tell a good story, but you're also selling people on the artwork. So your artwork has to be beautiful. And this is one of the reasons why manga is so much more attractive than American comic books. Manga is so attractive, so beautiful, right? There's a reason why it's taking over so much, right? So the artwork has to be beautiful, and you have to tell a good story. So when you're a comic book artist, you have to be a storyteller and a good artist. So you have to be a good writer and a good artist at the same time. So if one of those two things suck, then you're not gonna get people's attention, right? So if somebody does not like your artwork, they're out. They don't care. Now, let's look at the case of a novel, right? A novel is just text on a page, right? It's just text. It's just paragraphs. It's telling you a story. So the reason why people are more likely to buy a novel is because everything is left to the imagination of the individual. So whatever they're reading, and there's no pictures besides the book cover. There's no other pictures. So the individual, the reader, has to imagine the entire story. Okay, that's why novels sell so well, because it's all left to the reader, right? As to with a comic book, people have to like the artwork, they have to like the story, they have to like the narrative, how the story is told. But with a novel, it's all left to the individual's imagination, so people can imagine whatever they want, right? Now, let's go to reason number two. It has to do with, I mean, just think about it. There's more Hollywood movies based on novels than there are on comic books. Okay, so the reason why a novel sells more copies is because there's more genres, right? There's more genres, and actually, this is another reason why manga tends to sell more. Actually, there's more genres. Okay, so with a novel, you have fantasy, sci-fi, romance, comedy, urban fantasy, mystery, thriller, horror, you name it. And now with the Amazon Kindle, there's been like new genres rising. Now there's harem, there's sci-fi harem, there's fantasy harem, there's urban fantasy harem. There's dystopia. Dystopian novels sell really well. There's dystopia. There's post-apocalyptic, sword and sorcery, epic fantasy. You name it, right? Go on Kindle and you will see for yourself. Now, with comic books, the dominating genre in comic books, in American comic books, in the West, is superheroes. That's it. Where are the romance novels? The romance comic books, romance graphic novels. Where are the comedy graphic novels? Where are the science fiction, dystopian? post-apocalyptic? Where are the horror novels? Excuse me, horror comic books? Where are the mystery graphic novels? You see, this is the problem. This is the problem. There aren't enough genres. You go to manga, and there's all kinds of genre. There's even genre for like the LGBT people, and that's something that here in the West, you know, the Twitter mob is always like complaining about. So that's another reason. There you go. So that's why it's so much easier to sell a novel than it is for graphic novels. And actually, that's why it's so much easier for Hollywood movie companies to adapt a novel as opposed to a comic book, right? Because with a novel, you know, the director can just, you know, visualize whatever he wants. He can tell the story in whichever way he wants, right? And with a comic book, you know, a lot of people, especially with like anime live action adaptations, a lot of people always complain that, okay, well, that's not right, this is not right, that's not right. You know, how are you going to crunch a, you know, a story that's like, you know, that's like what, 30 volumes into a 2-hour movie? You know, and it's kind of the same case with comic books. I mean, there's more reasons to that, but I'm just kind of like narrowing it down to, you know, the easiest way to explain this, right? So novels is just easier to sell. It's easier to sell. You know, there's a whole bunch of like book publishing companies than comic book publishing companies, and book publishers, they make more money than comic book companies. Okay, that's just a fact. Okay, that's just the reality of it. You know, sometimes it's a hard pill to swallow, but that's what it is. I mean, you see the comic book industry collapsing. Comic books are collapsing, right? You go to a comic book shop, and you know, it's not filled with people, but you go to Barnes and Nobles, and it's filled. You see people all the time there, right? People buy books more than they buy comic books, right? And I mean, I've talked about this before, but you go to Barnes and Nobles, the manga section has like 12 shelves, as opposed to the comic book section has only like 4 shelves. Okay, it's manga dominates, novels dominate. You don't see publishing houses, you know, running out of business. You know, things like Penguin, Hachette, all these other, you know, book publishing companies. They're never gonna run out of business. You know. And it's funny because people thought that when the television was invented that nobody would read books because now we can see things, but it's a different experience. It's a different experience from reading a book and watching a movie, reading a manga and watching the anime. It's all a different experience, you know. And books dominate. Books dominate, and in many cases the book is still better than the movie. Take a look at Ready Player One, okay? Ready Player One is a good example. The book is way better. Both the original and the sequel, they're way better than the movie. And when a movie is made, there's things that are changed from the book. And when people that read the book are like, hey, what happened to this? What happened to that? Same thing with Harry Potter. There were parts in the Harry Potter books that, you know, was not in the movie, and people were like, hey, what happened to that part? What happened to that part? And this is why novels sell, you know, are more successful than comic books, and this is why, you know, publishing houses are never gonna go out of business. What is up, everybody? Thank you for watching the video. Make sure to subscribe to the channel so you can receive new future notifications. Check out the blog at andyrtv.com. Follow me on Twitter. If you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and leave your thoughts or anything you want to say right below this video in the comments below. This is Andy Matrix. Thank you for watching. Godspeed, everybody. Godspeed.